Hi, everybody. Welcome back to week 5 of our Human Behavior in the Social Environment class here at Widener University. So last week, you guys did an awesome job in terms of discussing depressive and bipolar disorders in your assignments on the discussion board. So this week, we're going to dive into schizophrenia spectrum disorders as well as other psychotic disorders and the very important and ever-present issues of transference and countertransference in clinical practice. So we've got some learning resources here, so make sure that you peruse those very carefully. We're also going to be revisiting Danny's biographical timeline again this week. So after you complete perusing all of the learning resources, you're going to come down to the discussion boards. So the first one is in regard to community conversations about mental health. So you're going to be using that SAMHSA website, the discussion guide for community conversations about mental health, as a resource. And after you look at that, you want to answer the question, how would you explain the symptoms of schizophrenia to a family member or a friend in non-professional / layperson language? So this is definitely a skill that we want to make sure that you're developing here in graduate school, because it's very easy as we're learning and honing our skills in terms of the DSM-5 to really start sounding like the clinicians, that you are. However, a really important part of being a competent clinical social worker is being able to explain the diagnoses and the symptoms in very simple, concrete ways that families can understand. So we want to make sure that we're getting some practice doing that here on our discussion board. And as usual, you want to make sure that you're following up with at least 2 of your classmates, preferably ones that don't have responses yet. And again, focusing on what you've learned from your classmates' posts and what can you add to the learning, what similarities and differences do you see among your classmates' posts. And also, most importantly, what did you learn here this week that you could directly apply in practice? So now you want to come down and complete our second week 5 discussion board post, which is in regard to transference and countertransference, 2 really important clinical issues that we see a lot. You've been provided with a video. It's fairly lengthy. It's about 45 minutes in length or so, about transference, projection, and countertransference. So after you watch that, you want to give an example of how transference, countertransference, or projection might affect the process of assessment for making a mental health diagnosis. So when we think about transference and as well as countertransference, these are expected normal findings in a therapeutic encounter. And you're remembering that transference is the transfer of a client's feelings onto you as the therapist or the clinical social worker. So many times clients will relate to us as they have related to previous authority figures like a parent or a teacher. Some of those feelings can be positive, some can be negative, and it's really important that we learn how to respond to them appropriately, because we're remembering that countertransference is how we're reacting as the clinician, our emotional reactions to the transference that the client is presenting. So as always, you want to make sure that you're following up with at least 2 classmates and following along with the response prompt guidelines here. So these are really important issues. I look forward to reading your discussions, and as always, reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns arise as you're doing this discussion post or any of this week's discussion posts. So after you complete those 2 discussion posts, you want to make sure that you take your week 4 quiz right here in our online Engage platform. And then your clinical vignette Part 2 is also due this week. There's a great video here that really explains the assignment in depth. So again, after you watch this video and read the rubric in terms of the clinical vignette Part 2, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help you be successful in the course. So I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you on our discussion boards and reading your papers this week.